Yeah, let's dive into headlines. Flames eliminated, as we know. Surprisingly, if we want to just put a bow on that shootout loss to the Nashville Predators, Daryl Sutter opts for Nick Ritchie over Ty Toffoli in the shootout. Now, I don't know. I mean, normally we don't question the lineup of the shootout roster of clubs around the National Hockey League. But when you get to the level of importance of this game, that scenario, I think it's fair game. I think it's fair game. So maybe that's just kind of dipping our toe into what has been a near abysmal season for the Calgary Flames. So first of all, your initial thoughts on Calgary not being in the playoff mix, and maybe we can kind of peel the onion away after that.
Well, I'm surprised. I thought they, when they got decimated in the summer, I thought Brad Treliving did about as good a job as you could. You can go back on our podcast.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we both agreed that out of a pretty bad spot, he pulled in some good players. It wasn't right from the very beginning. Like, that team struggled in October and November, and like, it never got to the point where you're like, oh, they've got it rolling now. Early it was Markstrom, then it was, Huberdeau never really found it in Calgary. Kadri and Sutter were at odds for a large part of the year. It comes right, now you get down to the shootout thing, and I can't figure out a world where I would pick Nick Ritchie in front of Tyler Toffoli. I just wouldn't. I don't know how many. Doesn't matter how many shootouts you have in practice. Toffoli's a better goal scorer, and that would have been my choice. Now here's the next stage to that, Dregs, and this is right up into what you deal with. What's next? Daryl Sutter is the only person, to my knowledge, in that management coaching tree that has
under
a contract. Like,
correct.
How is that even possible? And so what does that mean going forward? He's got 2 years left on his deal. I think I have in my head, and that's a wild scenario. That's and Calgary's in a funny spot. So they've got all this management stuff they've got to sort out. They still don't have their new arena sorted out. That thing's way beyond due date. And so, you're looking at a new arena there. Are you looking at max speed, 2.5, 3 years at least? Because you've got short building seasons in Calgary. It's not like if Arizona ever gets their stuff together, they can build 12 months of the year. So it's a funny set of circumstances around the Flames.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, right? There have been some speculating on Brad Treliving. Maybe he was approached before the start of the year and just said, you know what, let's just pump the brakes here. Let's get the season going, see where we're at, and maybe revisit it at that point. So those questions are going to have answers. Is Treliving coming back? Do the Flames want Brad Treliving back? Then what do you do with Daryl? It seems un-Daryl Sutter-like to step away in whatever capacity, unless maybe he goes into management if Treliving isn't coming back. There's all sorts of questions around this team. And then you look at their roster, and they've got a handful of guys who are pending unrestricted free agents who maybe are looking at this, assuming that they have market value as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And then you look at the long-term contracts of Kadri and Huberdeau. You've got Weegar there. There are way more questions available than answers.
Right.
And I don't know that those answers are going to come anytime soon, even though the season is about to end for the Flames.
Yeah, this will be really interesting because you have to establish what road you're going to be on. Are they going to try and bring along 6 or 7 young guys to balance out the money that they've paid at the top end? Do they have to add players that can? I think they have to probably add players that can compete around the ages of the guys they've got that are at the older end.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a really, really tricky spot.
Yeah.
And there's no question Daryl is not an easy guy to play for. There's
No,
no
no,
secret
no,
about that. That's
no.
been forever. And maybe some of those guys don't want to do that again. I mean, like there is a there's a real powder keg there in
Oh, I
Calgary
agree.
that
Yeah,
that's about ready to be lit because they've missed the playoffs. And you
yeah.
can't just say, "Oh, it'll be better next year." That's
No.
not the way.
Well, we'll continue to monitor that situation, but it will come to a head in the reasonably near future. The Winnipeg Jets need 1 point to clinch in the West. I mean, it seems like a foregone conclusion. They're going to do that unless they don't, but it seems like they
Well,
will.
there's analysis right there.
Yes,
They will
yes.
unless they don't.
Unless
I
they
like it.
don't.
I like it.
Um, but have you seen more out of Winnipeg that would give you an indication when they lock down this playoff spot, that is going to rejuvenate this group and they're going to be a handful in round one?
Well, I think Dregs the last week or so has been pretty, you know, pretty committed by
Yeah,
the Jets.
yeah.
After,
Look to
I
be.
mean, they were all over the map. Like it was, I think I was as surprised by them being in first place as I was by how bad they were for as long as they were. I kind of felt they were in the middle of that somewhere. Like they've got some really
Yeah,
good players and met some really good players, and they just they all seem to fight against what made them successful. Like it's a hard way to play. And
yeah.
if you look in the playoffs, if you get in there and and Ehlers and Connor find their game to the levels we
Oh,
know they can play at, and you've got a pretty good defense, you've got a great goaltender.
it's
Shifley seems
possible.
to, yeah, Shifley seems back on the beam a little bit here.
Yeah, yeah,
Like all of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, that's more of the team I expect
yeah.
them to be. And of course, if they get in, who they play is all over the map, right? Like it can be
That's
just
right.
about
Yeah.
anything.
Messy cap situation in Toronto, right? They've got Matt Murray, who continues to deal with symptoms, concussion related symptoms. You've got Ilya Samsonov, who has to play a lot, right? I mean, just by virtue of the position, they don't really have anyone else because they cannot call up Joe Wall from the American League because of their cap situation. So, excuse me, for the last couple of games, they've gone with an amateur trial goalie.
Mm.
Jet Alexander, university goalie, actually got in the game with 70 seconds left in a
Yeah.
blowout against the Montreal Canadiens. But the reason that this is a difficult story, it gets eye glazing for most hockey fans when we dive into the minutia of the cap and all of that. Toronto doesn't have a choice, and they've been dealing, consistently with the NHL. I believe that they felt like they had reached the point of an emergency recall scenario whereby they could have brought up an American League goalie, and the league said, no, you actually haven't. So, here they go, playing out the remainder of the regular season,
Right.
unless something changes with a goalie that's not a pro goalie. And look, okay, the Jet Alexander story, at least for me, Ray, it's a good story when it's a one-off story. The
Right.
guy gets 70 seconds in the NHL, never going to forget it. Good for him.
Awesome.
But then it turns ugly because you're talking about the best league in the world, right? There's pro goaltenders who are available, but because the cap is so tight for the Maple Leafs, they can't take advantage of that. And then you look at it from a playoff implication scenario. If you're the Islanders, or you're the Pittsburgh Penguins, or you're the Florida Panthers, and Samsonov gets hurt as we record this tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Joe Schmo has to go in there, well, that upsets the competitive balance of all of it as well. So I'm not sure who to blame in this one. I guess you have to blame the Maple Leafs for keeping that cap so razor thin that they're in this predicament.
I don't love the way the cap works a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But those are the rules.
Yeah.
And it's not a surprise. Like they know the rules. You can give them credit for manipulating the cap right to the last penny as they have.
Yeah.
And then you can say, yeah, but there has to be a contingency.
Yeah.
Or if you play without a contingency, this is what you get. Don't forget the Rangers, they did the same thing. it was only a month ago or 6 weeks ago, they were playing with 11 forwards and 5D.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so the goalie spot is different to me than the rest of the roster. I would love to see a goalie that you could sign to basically your practice goalie.
Yeah, like almost a taxi squad, right? Like
yes,
just
that
one allocated goalie.
Yeah, but he can only go in under
an
emergency circumstance.
Yeah.
He can only be, you could even, because teams would try to jack around with that right away too.
For sure.
And you could say he can only be in 3 games or 5 games or whatever, pick the number. So you don't just give a guy a day off to sit around. Yeah. But because the amateur tryout goalie, nice story and all that, but it's not really the way it should be. But it's like, you can blame the league if you want because you don't like the cap, but the Leafs put themselves in this soup. It's their doing, and now you got to hope that Samsonov doesn't get hurt, or your game one starter is Joe Wall.
Yeah, and I've reached out to the NHL on this, and the NHL really wants nothing to do with it from a publicity perspective, because to your initial point, the rules are the rules. The rules haven't changed. It's inside the collective bargaining agreement, and it's been there since day one of the CBA. So the NHL is willing to work as best they can with every club in the National Hockey League, but at the end of the day, there won't be any rule bending to accommodate the Maple Leafs.
Now, one thing I got to say, Dregs, I don't quite understand what are the rule, or what the rule is to say, you can have an emergency call up, or they deny them this call. I don't quite understand the rule to that, to be honest with you.
No, I'm with you. And it's, I asked that question and I got the response, well, I'm going to need a full 10 by 10 whiteboard and 8 bottles of wine so that I can explain it. And all the permutations and scenarios that go.
How polite?
Go into
how polite was that to tell you to beat it?
Pretty much, yeah. But it was also like, we've been, banging our head on this thing for several days now, and we're not sure we truly understand it either. Connor Bedard, the Regina Pats, eliminated from the Western Hockey League playoffs last night. So I don't know. Do we start? Everybody can look at the bottom feeders in the NHL regular season standings, which are soon going to close. But have you given this any thought? I mean, there are compelling stories if you look at the bottom 5 or so, right? Of where you could make the case that Bedard is needed the most, but maybe to spice it up a little bit, where is the best spot for Connor Bedard? And for me, that's as intriguing as anything, because I feel like the Chicago Blackhawks, with their resources and everything else, are probably going to get their rebuild transitioned and turned around more quickly than maybe some of the others. And that could be unfair to Columbus. You could make a case for the Anaheim Ducks and how Connor Bedard would fit in nicely there with the likes of Trevor Zegras and Drysdale and some of their younger pieces. Or is there another team for you, Ray, that seems to kind of leap out of the standings?
Well, I mean, you say who could use them the most? Well, the answer is all of them. You're not down there because you've got a real strong group put together. I don't know. I look at Montreal and I think, like, if they were able to pull off a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and now you have Dubois and Suzuki, and you could play Bedard on the wing, and all of a sudden, and you got Cole Caulfield, I'm like, ooh, that all of a sudden looks really quite interesting. I mean, Arizona's sitting there at, what are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the bottom. And I can't even tell you what they're going to do there. Like, what is that rebuild going to look like? Eventually, they're going to have to get players. You can't just keep collecting draft picks. And so that seems like that would be tough. Chicago, I'm with you. Columbus has some pretty intriguing forwards in their system, but man, they've been in a perennial rebuild, it seems like, for a long time. But you go, oh, wait a minute.
Feels that way.
But you go, what if Laine gets healthy? What you got Goudreau there. Yeah. You've got Kent Johnson. Marchenko's a good player. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, wait a minute. And they're getting
Some
Zach
pieces.
Werenski back. That
Yeah.
sounds decent. Anaheim and San Jose are a long way from being a good team. Like
Long way. Yeah.
just by the the position that they're in now. Um, I don't know. The kid's a phenomenal player. I think I've said before, the expectation on him is unrealistic,
Yeah.
and the fact is he's going to go to a pretty bad team, and it's going to be hard for him.
Yeah.
It really is, unless that team goes out in the summer and spends a little bit of money to
Yeah.
surround him a bit. Because here's the thing: if you're a bad team and you get Connor Bedard, you don't want to get pretty good next year. You don't
Yeah.
want that. You want to be no good again because you want a top pick the next year.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're building around a kid that seems to be, a pretty rare find.
Oh, 141 games, 144 goals in the
Yeah,
Western Hockey League.
like that's and don't forget too, like he's 17.
Yeah.
It's not like he's 19 years old.
So you're Connor's dad or his agent, Greg Landry. Look, we've been to enough international events. We've seen the great teams at Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, the European federations put together for the Men's World Championship. Connor has played a Summer World Junior.
Yeah.
Played World Junior in December. Just gave everything he could for the Regina Pats, to the Regina Pats. So if your dad or you're the agent, do you say, you know what, bud, we know Hockey Canada is going to call. You need to just sit this one out. You'll have plenty of opportunity to play at the Men's Worlds and other international events as a pro moving forward, but you need to rest and just get ready for the offseason, get ready for the draft. Would that be your advice?
It would be, because don't forget, the World Championships are 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So you go over there, kind of the 1st of May, you get back the 3rd week of May-ish, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Pretty soon you're at the draft. Like, he doesn't need to go to the combine. No, I got a sore shoulder. I don't know. He doesn't need to go.
Yeah.
But you're at the draft. Then you go to development camp, because they're going to want you there at the camp.
Yeah.
Then you got probably from there, what do you got? Maybe 7-8 weeks until camp opens.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be playing in a league that's fast forwarded to everything that you've ever done before.
Right.
I think the prudent spot is to stay. And Dregs, when is the lottery? Do you have the date offhand?
I don't, but maybe
it's after the first round, maybe, right? So the team is going to be picked. The World Championship is going to be picked.
Yeah.
Before that lottery, because that team would also have influence too.
I mean, he could be in Europe if he opts to go. I mean, which, okay, you're right. It's not insurmountable. It's not a huge deal, but it is part of the ceremony and everything that is the dance leading up to being selected first overall, right? So,
right.
I mean, that's
I just think that I would value the rest, given the last year that he's had.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up headlines with this. Jonathan Toews, all right? He's not saying he's done. He's not officially saying he's done. Sounds like if he decides to play next season, it's not going to be in Chicago with the Blackhawks. And we can appreciate why that would be too, right? I mean, turn the page. Maybe he does want to chase another Stanley Cup. If he feels strong enough physically, then good on him. Short-term, low cost, I think he'd be a real juicy ad, wouldn't he, for a top contender? If he looks at the Patrice Bergeron package or something like that, why wouldn't he do that if he feels healthy enough to do that?
Well, there's a couple of things to that. One is, nothing in his play right now shows you that he can be a really effective player on a good team, right?
Okay.
He hasn't played much at all. He hasn't played much. So he's not in great shape. it's really hard to get into shape, like the shape you need to be in as you get older. It's really hard. And maybe you don't have the stomach or the heart anymore to do that.
Yeah.
Like, he can't sort of say that he's going to do it.
No, that's fair.
So he's got to either be all into it, and it's not the playing. The playing's actually the easiest part to this, Dregs. It's all the other work to get ready to be possibly considered to play.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Bergeron. Boston's top two centers make $3.5 million this year on the cap. It's a big reason why they're able to do what they do. Now, next year, they're going to get banged with at least a couple of $1 million of cap charges. They'll deal with that later. But you have to be sure, if you're Toews, you want to put that work in to be able to be at least good enough that you're satisfied with your level of play. So I'm not as sold. I'm not as sold.
Not as sold that he's coming back, period.
Yeah, that he would have it in him to put all that work in to be the player he wants to be.
A lot of miles on that chassis, man, and some great play. Talked about Bedard, and think of the impact historically of Jonathan Toews at the World Junior level, etc. Those are your headlines. Hey, thanks for tuning into our YouTube channel. And while you're here, why don't you do us a solid? Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, you'll get access to all the latest uploads. You can stay updated on the latest news and interviews from the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast.
It only takes a couple of seconds. And from what I'm told, it helps with our algorithm thingamajig. Anyway, we appreciate the support.